So here we are again in this beautiful space for our second dialogue at the Crossroad. And the beauty of this space is that we don't really need to know exactly where this conversation will lead us. And that's what happened to our previous session. And that's the point of everything. So each one of us here brings a new perspective, a fresh understanding. There's no right or wrong, only discovering each of our journey and our internal world. And by the way, I am Kathy. I'm here to listen to each of one's voices, and we are joined here by our beautiful Eva and Marie. But before ever we could start the conversation, I would like to add, like, the previous session we had was actually so beautiful. I learned a lot about when it comes to self-acceptance and self-awareness. It actually brought me to a space when I got home that I have to reflect how the concept that we were talking totally resonates to where I am at right now through accepting myself. So that was a very valuable time, valuable moment. And yeah, anything you can also share, Marie, about takeaway from that session?
Oh, the takeaway of the last session, I would say, yeah, self-awareness is such a long journey, and we shouldn't blame ourselves because we weren't trained when we were a child to have these tools like we were talking about last time. And I do realize that it's very complicated, but it's so fascinating to talk to other people about this and how, you know, other people reflect on that. So yeah, it was really nice.
Yeah, it was so beautiful. And you actually added a lot of good stuff that I've learned a lot. How about you, Eva? Is there something that you can share, thoughts about the previous session we had?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's been quite a lot actually, but I'm very much looking forward to continuing the topic we touched upon about inner child. And well, I guess how to become aware of the child, the needs of the child. And I was really inspired by, you know, how our discussion took us to looking at these things from like different cultural perspectives. So that was also very interesting for me. And yeah, I'm delighted and honored to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm so happy to be here also. And with us here is Douglas, and the same as before, you are going to stand the role of the elder in this conversation. So is there anything that we can, you know, you can say more about self-acceptance, self-awareness, and whatever that might come up in this space?
So let me just quick say something about being an elder. Another word for saying old guy, you know. And well, sometimes we think we dread getting old. Actually, I have to say that I'm pleasantly surprised that being old includes the value of having lived long enough to have experiences, to have learned from. And I feel like, and I've told, I think, Kathy before, that I consider myself kind of a late bloomer, which means a lot of the good things of life have, you know, I'm discovering now. And so as an elder, I think wanting to share the value of my experience is a part of that. And so you're gifting me by honoring my voice and the things I've learned and written about, and I deeply appreciate what that is. So, and yes, I think the other sort of credential or credibility that comes is that I have spent time as a psychotherapist and have written 3 books. Even though I don't know how to sell or market them, they're written and they have a shape and form, and they've given me a kind of a comprehensive overview of how I perceive the work I do and the ways in which I understand our inner life and the influences on our inner life. So, you know, the name of the book for all 3 is called Living from the Inside Out. Okay, and the inside is our inner life. And like I think we've already acknowledged, a lot of times we're not taught to really know ourself in that way. So self-knowledge and self-awareness is something that we have to discover, often because what's there is problematic. You know, it's the emotions that are intense, it's the confusions that we feel, and what's that all about? How do I come to reconcile what that is? So, and my view is that it's in that process that leads us to what I think is a really nice aspiration, which is self-acceptance. Self-acceptance is the resting point at which I can say to myself and feel, okay, I'm okay. I accept myself as I am. As I am, with all my human, messy, you know, aspects, the imperfections that just come along with being a human being. I call it okayness, okay, because it's not, am I happy, am I fulfilled, was my life a success? Well, it could be, but more importantly, I'm okay with who I am.
Yeah.
And this to me is a really important aspiration. And the way it plays out, even in this conversation, is that we don't have to be perfect, okay? We get to be the human beings that we are, and sometimes a little nervous or whatever it is, because that's what human beings are.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's also something that I think is an invitation. People relax, chill, be yourself. This could be good, it could be boring, who knows? It doesn't, we're not going to worry about that, okay? We're just going to have this conversation. So, and I like what has already come up from last time, this idea of what is inner child, and how does that come from childhood, and so yeah, let's see where this conversation goes, and any thoughts you might have about what I just said about self-acceptance or self-awareness?
I just want to have like a clear picture of what is it like the inner world is composed, you know, like which part of us, because it's so complex.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on, but I know there are concepts that we could use that people would understand that, oh, this is part of my inner world, which is emotion. But what other parts that they need to align, they need to kind of like not solve, but at least get to know first, so that they know like, okay, first I need to deal about this and this and this, and the alignment comes in, and that's where self-acceptance or the okayness flows.
It's a great question, and at times it can feel overwhelming to think of all the complications of our inner world. And in the same way that we might think of an orchestra that creates music, and it can be beautiful music, or it could be not so beautiful. What we can do is we can look at the sections of an orchestra. We have the string section, we have the brass, we have the percussion, we have the conductor. We have all of the parts that together weave into what then becomes the symphony, okay? The music that gets created. So part of understanding our inner life is being able to break it down into parts, okay? To create an orderly version of how we think about ourselves, okay? And for me, the three central parts to our inner life are emotion, okay, thought or thinking, okay, and body. Body involves not only our nervous system, but the way we move, the way we experience the here and now through our senses, okay? So it's when those three parts are in balance, they're relating to each other, that we gain an understanding of what is going on. Now in therapy, and different therapists take an approach that each one of those is a doorway to insight. I tend, as a therapist, to look at emotion first. Okay, what are the emotions and how intense or how strong are those emotions? And how does those emotions affect what I'm thinking? Okay, now we could go the other way. Listen my thoughts. What am I telling myself? What am I worrying about? You know, and then we could see what emotion. What we tend to neglect is the body. What's the role of the body? Okay, how does our body generate, for example, a survival, fight, flight, freeze? You know, those are all part of our sympathetic nervous system. Okay, so any one of those is a doorway in, and what I really like to do is see the connection. Like I said, worry is anxiety plus thought. Under the category of thought, we might have beliefs. Okay, we might have anticipation or expectation, future-mindedness. And basically with time, we start to get clearer, oh, that's what's happening. Okay, we don't choose it. We don't say, oh, I think I'm going to feel anxious now, and then I'm going to start to worry. It's happening. Okay, so then we become the observer of what it is that's happening. We gain just a little bit of distance from being caught in it, and we can gain more influence over how we regulate and manage our inner life.
Yeah. That's such a beautiful explanation. I think a lot of people really need to know about this, because if you're just aware about, okay, this thought triggers the worry, and then you start to feel your heart beating fast, and you will start like hyperventilating, panic attacks per se.
Right.
But then nobody knows how to like, okay, soothe yourself, because nobody taught us how to do that. I had this experience before when I was doing self-yoga, because I practiced yoga for a while. And I think I opened, because yoga is something that also opens your emotional body. And I opened something so deep that it took me to a space where I was trying to process father wound.
Yes.
Because my dad died when I was 5. I didn't grieve that much. I was young. Nobody told me to, like, everyone telling me, oh, she's not crying. I'm just 5 years old. But it actually hit me so hard when I'm an adult, you know. So I touched into that part of myself, and it was so intense, and I didn't know what to do, and I panicked. But it just so happened that I was connected with a friend, and I called him, and he was going through therapy, and I felt the safe space to tell him, oh, what's happening? What can I do? But I was in panic. I was crying, and I called him like, okay, Kathy, breathe. Just breathe. Just be present. Come back to your body. Okay, listen to me, and it helped me so much. So if people just know about how to soothe themselves, how thoughts could actually trigger, you know, like how your body react to the present moment, but how you can also pull yourself out from that, that will be so powerful for everyone, right?
Absolutely. That's right. We can eliminate a lot of time and energy spending worrying or going through the painful parts of our life if we understand, oh, this is what it is, the direction I need to go in.
Yeah.
Okay, and you're getting at something that's also very important, because we can talk about emotion, for example, the grieving, okay, and there's the surface level. What am I feeling right now based on the circumstances of here and now? But all of us have a subconscious or even an unconscious version of what those emotions are. You were not ready at the age of 5 to integrate the meaning of that loss, okay? So you didn't have the direct emotional response that years later, when you have an adult insight about what it meant to you not to have a father through your life, then touched on through a physical movement, okay? The ways our body holds these unconscious or subconscious things. So again, here's an educational. Emotion is yes, it's on the surface, but it's touching into that which has developed You know, it's the story of the kid who got bit by the dog and now he's afraid of every other dog. So the fear comes from a situation, but it's embodied in an undercurrent of belief or expectation. And all of us have that. And this is where self-awareness can also be so important. Because we can listen. What comes up? How strong is it? What's the trigger? What is it? Maybe I've avoided something for a long time. What is it I've avoided? Is this the time for me to face it? Am I ready for that? You know, these kind of.
I have a question here, if I may. Speaking of the unconscious, so you mentioned that there are, generally speaking, 3 doorways to access what's happening, like body, emotions, thoughts. I wanted to ask about visual, like mental images, representations, you know, like daydreams, imagination. When people would just create something artistically, like where does that land? Because it is basically projecting whatever it is in the unconscious and giving it some either a physical form, or it can stay in the mind. I mean, for example, my brain is very good at daydreaming. Basically, when I was a kid, I developed this routine of showing myself a movie, so that was like my primary defense mechanism. When I was a kid, I would withdraw and I could like control it to some extent. Like I could decide, okay, now I'm not very interested in what is happening around me, or I don't like it very much, so I'm going to watch a movie in my head. But it's still like very visual.
Yes.
And so yeah, just wanted to ask you about that.
Yes, we have what I call the hypothetical domain. It's kind of a fancy way to say our imagination. So our inner world includes a whole space that is often what we would think of as in our mind, okay? Our mind is a very active and fluid place. And we can sometimes withdraw completely from the world we're in and exist in our thoughts, in our mind, in the hypothetical domain. Now, there's one version of it called stream of consciousness, okay, where there's no application of our will on the kinds of thoughts we're having. So controlled thoughts are on one end of the spectrum, stream of consciousness is on the other. And it can be very healthy to just allow our thoughts to go wherever they want, okay? But if it's fueled by anger or guilt or fear, wow, those thoughts are going to take us to places that might be fueling more of that, okay? And if it's just unconsciously happening and we get quite removed from the actual experience of living life, then it becomes a little bit concerning. We can be in a delusional or a psychotic condition, like so far in our own thoughts that we're no longer functioning. It's extreme, and it's not what you described as an example of that. It's a normal thing for children, particularly when the adult world around them isn't present to them. You see, the adult world is busy doing what adults do, and we're alone in the present, which children are. Then we can often revert to our imagination or our hypothetical domain as another place to be.
Thank you. And I guess just to clarify my question for myself as well, I guess I was asking, can this material, like this visual material, this imagination material, become another doorway to accessing whatever is happening in the psyche in general? Like, because it's not exactly an emotion, and it's not exactly the body, and it's not really a thought, like there is no rational reasoning. It's more like storytelling or just art, basically, I guess, as a part of storytelling.
Yes, and it's important that we create the space for that stuff to emerge, okay? Because it's allowing the unconscious to emerge, and usually those storytelling has some beneficial effect, either in the ways that it tells us what it is to process. If it's loaded with guilt or anger, then it's like, oh, something we need to pay attention to. But maybe it's just fanciful and playful. And it allows us to be able to find a freedom to express ourselves in those kind of ways. Now, there's a couple of versions. One is, we say, the personal unconscious. So it might be directly related to experiences that we've had. Jung and others have talked about a collective unconscious, so that our individual lives are also influenced by a huge pool of what's experienced prior to us. Okay, and that what comes through us isn't just unique to our particular life. It actually has to do with, we're part of humanity, past and present, you know. So, but there's a healthy benefit to creating space in our life that allows for that unconscious to emerge. Dreams are often thought of as another way for those things to come to the surface. And so lots of people pay attention to what kind of dream did I have, and maybe interpret it through symbols. My own take is, I always ask a person, what was the emotion in the dream? If your dream was a frustration dream or a fear dream, generally it's telling us there's something in your subconscious that maybe we need to figure out. What is that emotion about in your real life experience? So,
You know, your question reminds me of, you know, when you pay attention to kids drawing, for example, it does tell a lot about their inner world, because I think they don't have the maturity to express properly what they feel, and you know, even as an adult, it's very difficult, because most of the time when you say, "Hey, how are you?" "I'm fine, I'm fine." There are thousands of words to express your emotion, but most of the time it's fine, okay, and that's it. So I think for kids, creativity, imagination, it's this expression at the moment. So, you know, we always pay attention, especially as a parent, when you have a very morbid or very very special drawing, you know, from your kid, and it's like, oh, what's going on in his life at the moment? So weird. But I think there's a way to, every person has a way to express the inner world. So it can be art, it can be conversation, but like you say, you know, the doors of the thought and emotion and body. I would, in my practice, I would focus more about the thoughts, for example, because you know, the concept of the non-violent communication with Marshall Rosenberg, he said everything that you think will generate an emotion, and this emotion will generate an action. And I do believe that you cannot deal with the emotion, like you cannot suppress them. It exists, but your thoughts will have an impact on your emotions. So the only thing you can change is your thinking, according to me. I'll give you an example as a very simple fact, like the train is late. You're in a train and the train is late. That's a fact, and it's the same for everyone. But maybe in this train you were with your boyfriend, and you know, he was about to leave, so this fact will generate you some joy because you can spend more time with him. While on the other hand, the lady next to you, she is super late and she has a very important meeting, for example. So see, the same facts will generate different perspective and different emotions. So I think when I'm trying to work with my clients, for example, we're always trying to work on what are your thoughts about you, you know, or like you said, with the unconscious collective, what your parents said about you, or what the people say about Vietnamese or French. I take French, for example, because right. Unconscious collective say that French are lazy, they do strike all the time, yelling all the time and everything. So at some point, you know, this integrates, these thoughts are integrated, and then it generates some emotions. And yes, French can be very angry, but maybe because their thought is it's normal. I don't know if it makes sense.